So the big blind bets 25, and I'm looking at the board and I've got top and bottom, but obviously there's a straight out there, and I do have a fairly weak player behind me. I considered raising, but again, it's one of these situations where sometimes like with the bottom two on a straightening board, top and bottom in a limp pot, guys get a little bit antsy, and if they're just going to fold away like top pair, you can sometimes actually get yourself into a way ahead, way behind type of scenario.
As I tend to do, I am cruising on into Peppermill, listening to the latest episode of the Crush Live Poker Podcast. Some good stuff there from Bart Hansen, as always. That is the best place to go if you want to try to improve your live poker game with training. I've been going there since 2010, and while the results this year are notwithstanding, the material I've learned from that site has been very, very good to me over the past decade and a half. So if you want to get 25% off a basic or premium subscription for life, all you got to do is click the link in the description below. So obviously for me in 2025, I have not made perfect decisions in all the hands I've played, and I haven't wasted much time coolering anyone. And that ends today. Unless, you know, it doesn't.
Damn.
Vlog 302 begins at North Star, California, a place where some guys ski in Tyreek Hill jerseys, and others do so in Jordan Love jerseys. It's also a place where they occasionally give out free champagne. And speaking of skiing, as we dissolve from that video into the poker room, this dude is rocking a sweatshirt with the logo from the Chutes at Mount Rose Ski Tahoe, which means that this dude is a freaking badass skier. Because as far as I'm concerned, one would never wear a shirt of the Chutes if you haven't actually skied down them. And if you look at them, they are vertical walls, and I can't ever imagine getting good enough to actually do that. The game on table 1 was full at 11 a.m., so I would have a wait. During that wait, I would learn that one of the two name-off gentlemen, pictured here, got an ace 9-9 flop with his pocket aces and lost. Who does he think he is? Me? I'd also have a lengthy conversation with not the professor, but rather James, the actual professor, about a variety of topics, and felt smarter as a result. We'd finally fire the game up at 1 p.m. on table 5. It may be my favorite table to play on, but the lineup itself was not great out of the gate, though it would improve. I'd start off 3-betting ace-king and getting snap-called en route to an 8-8-9 2-club flop, on which I would simply give up and fold to a bet on the turn, which came the 10 of clubs. We'd get a cutoff limp, 5-handed, and the button, known for being aggressive, raises to 30. I have 9-10 of diamonds in the big blind. Could consider 3-betting here, but I don't. I just make the call, as does the cutoff. So with $90 in the pot, the flop would come out king 10-10 2 clubs, giving me 3 10s. I go for the check raise, which is something that is generally easier to do when your opponent bets. And in this case, he does, making it 40. I check raise to $105 here, looking to build the pot up against hands like King Jack and King Queen, even though I wasn't sure how often he would continue on with those. Sure enough, he does make the call, and with 300 in, the turn is the ace of diamonds. Now that is just likely a terrible card for me. It's going to kill my action against the aforementioned holdings. So I'm just going to size down as a result. Yes, that would be giving him a better price on his flush draws, should he have those, but I think it's a risk worth taking. I make it half the pot. And once again, I get a quick call. So, with $600 in, the river is an offsuit 3. A card that would appear to be a massive brick. The flush draw is missed, so there could be an argument for checking here. But I don't care how aggressive an opponent you're dealing with, most people will never try to steal the pot that you check raise the flop on, bet big on the turn as well, and now are checking the river to. You're not going to see many guys bluff in that spot. So I like the idea of just value betting it myself more, making it $225. That would leave me $370 behind. And he gives this a few seconds worth of thought, and finally jams all in for that last $370. So I have arrived at the unenviable can't call, can't fold situation. Now, obviously, that's not a thing, but if it is, I'm convinced this is it. Now, based on the pot odds alone, this should probably be a call, but based upon 15 years of playing in this game, trips is simply not good when you get jammed on here. More often than not, Queen Jack isn't good either, though that was certainly a hand that I knew he would do this with. That's just the reality. Now, there are a few more reasons I'm not going to get into that also played a role in the decision I would make here. But after thinking about this for about a minute, I would elect to fold and save my 370. I would do so face up, hoping I could get a reaction and hoping I could show you guys for the vlog on what is going on here. And sure enough, I would get a reveal. He would show 10-3 for the rivered full house. A very bendeach 2025 type of runout, that's for damn sure. I would then call a 3-bet of $135 with pocket nines, thinking they were the best hand at the time. They were. Unfortunately, my opponent would make trip aces with the king kicker and busted a short stack in the process, and I would fold to the first bet that was made, thinking that he actually was going for thin value with kings or queens, not that he actually had the monster. +1 would have the rock in this spot. It would fold to me on the button with ace 7 of spades, and I raised to 25. That guy is my only caller. So with 55 in, we're heads up to deuce, 3, 4, 2 spades, giving me the nut flush draw. Checks to me, and I bet another $25 here. And let's just be honest, this is one of those spots where, yes, you only have ace high, but you want action in this spot. This is a guy who's clearly not a shark. He's defending the rock. He's going to have a lot of hands. You want action here all damn day.
All day, every day.
Not all day, every day, but every day.
He calls. And with 105 in, the turn is an ace, which is a weird turn card. As I'm debating bet sizing, he goes ahead and makes one for me, putting in 60. With a one-liner to a 5 and him having been in the rock, there is simply nothing I can do here but call. And with 225 in, the river is the 6 of diamonds. He then announces, same bet, while putting in 70. Obviously, same bet would be 60. The dealer, Mark in this case, says that doesn't mean anything. The bet is what he put in. Now, there are some dealers that I would question on that one, but this isn't one of them. Not that it matters anyway, but I just thought that was a weird little detail of someone saying same bet doesn't actually mean same bet. I wasn't planning on calling him anyway. I fold the hand, and he shows the ace of clubs, which means there is not a single other hand he could have that I could beat at that point. But it's another big misdraw and another frustrating hand to toss onto the pile of many that have happened this year. This is a mid-set. Fuck it. I'm just not in the mood. Let's just keep playing cards. This was the first day of the NCAA tournament, and I felt nostalgic back to 2006, 2007. You know, the years of Kevin Durant and Greg Oden being in the tournament. Because back then, I really cared about every game. But lately, my desire to watch just has not been there. Though the official Vegas Instagram account posted a video that makes watching it look pretty damn good if you do so at Stadium Swim. My goal is to watch a Golden Knights game there. I have informed Anna of this goal, and she did not express any opposition. So I'm now down to less than $300 in front of me, planning on walking up to the cage and rebuying, but I would look down at pocket aces. Not surprisingly, like what seems to be a high percentage of the time, you get aces, you get them under the gun. And I'm not a big fan of the limp raise play, so I just straight up raised to 35. MP1 is in the straddle, and he snap calls, which I thought was surprising. The button comes in as well. So with 110 in the pot, the flop is 10-9 deuce, all hearts. So, I have $250 left here. There are a lot of hands that are going to have a lot of equity against me, but not a lot of hands that actually are going to have me beat right now. One of these two guys in particular felt like the type that might look me up light. So I just go ahead and take my remaining $250 and bet it all right now. Certainly hands like ace-queen with the ace of hearts will want to continue here. The first player, who's not the guy I thought was going to give me action, does think about this for a while before finally folding. What I needed from the second guy was for him to think about this too. But he doesn't think about it for more than a half second and snap calls, which is obviously not good. So we have about $600 in the pot, and he shows 9-10 offsuit for 2 pair. So I do have outs, but as you can see, they don't get there, and we are felt it. And for those who don't know what that feels like, it's not the best feeling. But in this casino, there are unlimited rebuys, at least up until 5 o'clock. This man is the pizza master. Young Chucky Dave himself.
Fresh on the podcast.
On the podcast, baby. I'd buy in for another $1,000, and on the first hand, my losing image would get me 2 callers when I would raise to 50 pre-flop with pocket 10s, and I would have to fold them on a queen-high flop to a guy who would open jam, but was nice enough to show ace-queen. By the way, can I just ask you guys a question? Does your player pool have a guy who changes seats more than he plays hands? Because I kid you not, mine does. On the opposite end of that spectrum, Mr. W sits down in that game, buying in for his usual 300. Here he is in MP2 with the rock, and we get a hijack limp. Cutoff follows suit, and I have 6-8 of diamonds in the big blind, and simply toss in the extra $5 with Mr. W checking his option in the sleeper straddle, as you can see. So, with $40 in, the flop is 7-9 deuce with a couple of diamonds, giving me a flush draw and a straight draw, but unfortunately not a straight flush draw. I lead out with it in this limped pot, betting 20. As you can see again, Mr. W snap calls. Though that's kind of like the sun rising. You just know it's going to happen. Anyway, the hijack, the same guy who just called me with the 9-10 offsuit when I raised to 35 earlier, so obviously not a tight player, raises to $75 here. Now remember, he limped in pre-flop. For whatever that's worth, and however that's going to affect what you guys think should be the optimal play here, as Bart Hampton has talked about on the aforementioned Crush Live Poker podcast, which I hope you guys are checking out. Generally speaking, when someone raises a bet post-flop, they are rarely folding, and that certainly felt like it was going to be the case here. So I don't take that particular route. I just call. Mr. W picks up his cards, looks at them, puts them down, and tosses in the remaining chips. And with $265 in, the turn is a 6. So I make the extremely unnecessary pair of 6s and check. MP2 checks as well, and the hijack bets 150. I just feel I have way too much equity to give up on this hand right now. Not that I'm going to overly love the idea of rivering 2 pair here and facing a big bet, though, spoiler alert, that wouldn't have been the worst thing to do. I put in the chips, with Mr. W giving it some thought, but ultimately folding the turn. So with $565 in, the river pairs the deuce, and I check again. Obviously, I'm hoping against hope that he will simply check back here with a bigger misdraw and I can win with a pair of 6s, but that doesn't happen, as he makes a $200 bet. I did give this about 10 seconds worth of thought, because obviously this is a pretty polarizing river to bet, and he could obviously be playing a lot of draws this way, and I could bluff catch potentially, but I had no real reason to think he was the type that would do that. He just seems like the type that's going to play too loose pre-flop. But I fold the hand, and he shows pocket kings for a slow-played monster pre-flop. Another big draw, another miss. What a shock, I know. One of the odd bright spots of the past couple of weeks of poker, for me, and there haven't been many, has actually been double board hold'em bomb pots. I feel my play has improved in a lot of them, and I've also run good in a couple of them that didn't make the vlog. And in this one, we have 8 players dealt in. So with $200 in the pot, I look down at pocket queens on the button. The first flop would come out King 10-8, and the other Jack 5-3. Mr. W immediately jams all in middle position 2 for a little under $300. Now, Mr. W's ratio of bomb pots to all-in situations is about the highest in the history of poker. So you just kind of know that's coming. A couple of other players fold. The cutoff has me covered in this spot. Tough player, but not a tight player. He did, after all, raise 10-3 earlier on. He makes the call of Mr. W's all-in. So what is my play here? I don't know why I'm asking you that, because I already know what the play is. The only hand he has that can beat me on both boards is pocket kings. And this gives me an opportunity to put pressure on the cutoff. I have $800 left in my stack. That may not be enough for him to be considered pressure, but I figured there was a small chance it might be. And against these two opponents, there is no other play that you can make in this spot, so all my chips go into the pot. I was hoping he would at least think about this, but instead he says, well, I don't like it, but I got a call. He ends up having King 10 for 2 pair on the bottom board and nothing up top. Mr. W, who's already all in the smaller pot, has Jack 9 for a pair of jacks on one board and a straight draw on the other. So there is about $1,000 in the main pot that Mr. W is playing for, and amazingly, around the same amount in the side pot between me and James. That is truly bizarre. So they deal the cards. I would drill a set of queens on the top board, which I certainly didn't hate, but on the river, that board comes a 9. Forward cutoff, 2 pair on the bottom, and runner straight on top. Mr. W would hit a straight on the bottom as well, but that didn't affect me because I was already freaking getting scooped in a spot where I thought I would scoop a small percentage myself and chop about 95% of the rest of the time. But instead, neither happens. We get totally screwed by the run out and are felted for the second time on the day. So if you're just joining us, and I'm not sure why you would be, not a single hand won on this vlog. A 3-outer in a trips over trips hand. Aces losing to 9-10 offsuit. The same guy limping kings late position and fading half the deck. And then a bomb pot against the game's 2 loosest players in a great spot. And both make straights after all the money was in. But the good news? I wouldn't have to waste a single dollar tipping the cashier on my way out. All right, wrapping up the session after that last bomb pot hand that you just saw, booking a $2,500 loss. If you look at all the 3-hour sessions I've ever played in my life, you can pretty much guarantee that was the single unluckiest. And if you look at all the years of poker I've ever played in my life, 2025 is certainly also the unluckiest. Other than that, it's going great. All right, coming up in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you video evidence of a guy betting $975 into a pot of $15, and I call him without a pair. And that wasn't even the most shocking hand against that one opponent in that 1 hour of play. And you're going to see both those 2 hands coming up after we read a couple of more comments and we give away a coin that is 99.9% pure silver. The winner will be announced next week here on this section of the vlog. But a couple of more nominees that have come in. The first from, and I love that he changed his handle to this, local fave Dave B. And by the way, I didn't just start calling Dave Bonini that just because it was funny. I do believe that he is genuinely one of the most liked and most respected poker players in the entire player pool here in Reno. And he says, my sole intent of my comment is to win the coin so that I can go all in with the skinny on a massive bluff into like 6 players while simultaneously throwing the coin into the pot to further incentivize a call and then showing when everyone folds. Or maybe this comment is the real bluff, and I will have the stone nuts. But someone reading this will hero call with middle pair, and I will crush their soul, making them go home and rethink their life choices.
You want to go home and rethink your life?
Well, Dave, if you do that, make sure you get that shit on video. Matthew writes in, I'm sure your short-term poker goals are to play as much as you can and profit as much as you can. Do you have a long-term poker goal, he asks? And I don't just want to give you a ridiculous answer like, my goal is just to play as good as I can every session, blah, blah, blah. I want to give you a legitimate answer to that question. And it is one that I have said on this vlog before. So those who have been with the vlog are already aware that this is the way that I tend to look at it. My goal is simply to make more money than I made the previous year. And that's going to be a tall order this year, by the way. Let me just tell you that much. But the two best years of my career were 2021 and 2022. And then in 2023, I failed to actually meet that goal that I just described. But I think 2023 was probably the single best year of my life overall. I met Anna that year. My son was really starting to develop. I still had a good year playing poker. I traveled the entire country, and my Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup. So the fact that I didn't achieve the goal meant nothing to me that year. But to answer your question, I just try to do better in any given year than I did in the previous year. Which, by the way, that's looking like it's going to be a really easy goal for me to achieve next year. Keith writes in, been a fan since the early days of the vlog. The only thing I have a question on is when you have a losing session, I find myself in a dilemma. I'm not sure if I should hit the like button on the vlog because I like the content or dislike button because I hate that you have lost. I'm confused on what to do. Well, Keith, you already know the answer to that, but let me just tell you, when I book a losing session, that is when I need you the most, all right? So you hitting the like button when I lose, that's going to help morale more than anything else. So I genuinely will always appreciate any likes I can get, but if you do it during a losing session, it's going to make me feel that much better. And this last one is not going to be a contender for the coin, but it's worth touching on because so many people have brought this kind of thing up as a result of the downswing that I've been on. Bob writes in, why don't you play elsewhere? These players seem to know you. Yes, Bob, that is true. The players all know me. When I started doing the vlog, I actually did worry about that. I thought to myself, are people going to watch this and they're going to have tape on me and they're going to know what to do? And obviously, in some instances, I'm sure that has happened. But I've made a lot more money playing poker since I started doing the vlog than I did before. So I think that the benefits that it has in terms of me being able to review my own play, trying to watch things that I do on myself, and just the ability to process the game and relay it has helped me as well. So I'm not overly worried about that. And when it comes to players knowing me, I also know them. The vast majority of the time, throughout the entire time I've been playing poker, the more hands I play against anyone who is not a full-time professional poker player, I acknowledge those guys are going to be better than me. I would sure as hell hope they're better than me. They've devoted their entire life to this, and I have not. But the more time I spend playing hands against anyone else, the advantage in the long run has always swung over to me. And I got to believe that'll continue to be the case going forward. There's also a lot of questions about why I don't go play somewhere else or why I don't play lower stakes. Well, the answer to those questions is very easy. Here where I live in Reno, the other casinos, and I'm only talking about, I think, 2 other casinos really, that offer poker, they only have 1-2. And there is occasionally a 3-5 game at the Peppermill that would kind of be the optimal scenario in terms of where to play during a downswing if you want to go that direction. But that only goes on Friday nights, and I never play then anyway because I'm usually spending time with Anna or whatever the case is. So it's not really an option, which is fine for me anyway, because my philosophy over many years now when it comes to downswings is I'm just going to keep doing the same thing I've been doing. I'm not going to play more hours when I'm running hot. I'm not going to play that many less hours when I'm running bad. I'm going to usually stick to my 3 sessions or so per week, usually 5 or 6 hours throughout the course of those sessions. And I'm just going to keep doing that. And over the long term, it's always worked out well for me, and I expect it will here too. Now let's tell you about what happened in the other session that I played this week. Obviously, the one that you just watched didn't go so well, but we had a guy in the game who was clearly looking to gamble, so much so that he had shoved all in pre-flop several times just as like an open. Just, I know it's a no limit game. I was going to bet my entire stack and see what happens. Well, he does this in this instance when he has $975 in front of him and I have him covered. He's first to act and it folds all the way around to me in late position with ace king. I'm not folding this hand, but I do ask him, do you want to run this twice? And to his credit, he just says, no, I'm only going to run it once. And I said, okay, I call. So we have just under $2,000 in the pot. And once he says, I just have an ace, I felt pretty good about it. Up until we got to the flop, and look at that. I had to sweat this thing out, and let's see how it plays out from there.
Ace of spades.
Wow.
Come on, Don.
Wow.
Come on, spades.
That's a good card for you. Good card. Good hand. Good
Wow.
Somehow, ace king high is able to hold up in this instance, and I am able to stack a much needed pot coming off the session that I had in this particular vlog, which is obviously one of the unluckiest in vlog history. Speaking of bad luck, I already mentioned that my guy Brian Namath had aces full of nines on the flop. He raised pocket aces, got an ace 9-9 flop, and lost to a guy with king 9. The very next day, the same guy who just jammed all in on me with the ace 9 plays a hand against him, and I didn't see the pre-flop action, but it's not really all that relevant because the flop came out deuce 6-6. Now in Reno, deuce 6 is known as the Brian Namath because he wore number 26 while playing for DC United. There was a bunch of Hollywooding and conversation taking place on this flop. I didn't know what the hell was going to go on, but it was clear that a lot of money was going to go in. It turns out Brian had aces again, and his opponent here had the deuce 6. He shot him with his own damn gun.
I'm gonna shoot you with your own gun.
Unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen someone run so bad with pocket aces in such a short period of time. That'll wrap things up for this edition of the vlog. We'll give the coin out next week, so get those last nominees in. You must be following me on Instagram and be subscribed to this channel to be qualified to win that coin. And if you're out of the country, you got to pay for shipping. And I'll be shipping it to someone next week.
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate and finally make a move. I think of you and all the shit you don't do. Well, I'ma make hella sure that I don't become you. I have no regrets, yeah, I'll tell